I'm not really sure how or where to begin. It's hard to find the words to really describe what happened or how it felt or the hell that it unleashed in my head for 2 decades. But I can't go on living with this secret.
Emily, can you dance?
Oh, good morning. Good morning. Do you sleep good? Come sit up here. Let's eat. Come on. You want to eat with Daddy?
Here, you can eat some strawberries. You're going to New York tomorrow?
Yep.
What time do you leave?
Really early.
Okay.
I'm gonna go downstairs today, try to get some work done, and then I'll spend the evening with the kids. This all started when I was 9. I got a small magic kit for Christmas from my grandmother. It's not at all what I wanted for Christmas, but it's the only thing I remember getting that year. A few short years later, I was winning awards and performing magic across the country. I know it sounds crazy, but by the time I had graduated from high school, I'd performed in almost all 50 states, done tours in Europe and Asia, did my act on cruise ships in the Caribbean. It was pretty insane. Being a magician gave me some pretty amazing opportunities, but what is magic, really? Is it the sleight of hand elegance of a card trick, the dramatic execution of a straitjacket escape? What I've discovered is no, that's not magic. Don't get me wrong, I believe that real magic exists. I just believe that what you see an illusionist perform on stage isn't magic. Those are just clever illusions. We may refer to it as magic, but it's not real. It may feel magical or supernatural even, but it's still fake. It's like a counterfeit version of the supernatural. Ultimately, it's a form of deception. I guess you could say that means deception can be harmless and fun. After all, magicians, we aren't out to con or swindle you. We're out to entertain and to awaken that childlike wonder that once existed when you were a little kid. We do this by deceiving your senses. We remind you that things are not always as they seem, and that there might be more going on than what we can merely see with our eyes. But as fun as it is to be cleverly deceived, it can also be dangerous. And it turns out that magicians are not the only ones who are deceiving people.
All right, we
snap the
about to
whole thing?
witness some street magic right now.
Pull one out real quick. Doesn't matter which one. This isn't one of those things where you memorize your card. We need to make sure that is the only card in the entire world that could be that card. Okay. We've never met before, right? So I just want you to just sign your name across the face. Like big letters, just write your name there across the front of it. We got one card out. Can't do anything crazy. Can't switch it. This is the only card. Jack of spades. It's got your name on it. Just go bend the corner like this. Okay. Bend it back and forth a few times. Get a good little crease in there. We're gonna take this corner right here. Tear it off. It's actually tearing, right? A lot of people think it's actually tearing, but go ahead and take your fingers out like this. Take some fingers. I just want you to reach in there. Pull that corner off. Pull it off. Rip it off. Yeah. Now, do you feel that? It actually tore off, right? Actually tore off. Check this out. Jackson. I want you to see this up close.
Let me see.
Okay. I want you to see this up close, quick.
Okay, that's why I got your checks. I thought you said I can't put what you got. I can't put
Same card?
Oh, wow. It's not even wet.
It's not even wet, huh?
Nah.
That's
the devil.
So when I was 21, I had this epiphany that the language of deception is universal. You see, I'd made $1 million. I was traveling the world doing magic shows. I had escaped my little small town in southeast Tennessee and moved to the city of Nashville. I got married. I built a nice house. I parked a couple of nice, expensive cars in my driveway. The American dream, right? The problem is it didn't feel like a dream. I was traveling around the world, tricking people, doing magic shows, and eventually came to the realization that the world was tricking me. Everything eventually started feeling so empty that it led to me asking this basic question: how did I get tricked into believing this stuff? I started digging, trying to figure it all out, and that's when I realized that the same principles of deception that illusionists use to trick people in the context of a magic show, those turned out to be the same principles of deception that everyone from politicians to marketers and advertisers used to trick us into believing all sorts of stuff that isn't true. They were influencing the way that we thought, and I was fascinated by the correlation, so much so that I stopped caring as much about how magic tricks worked and started asking why magic tricks work. I began noticing that the methods that I was classically trained to use as an illusionist on stage, they were also taking place on streets and in office buildings and in classrooms and living rooms all across America. To fool someone, I was taught to do things like distract and misdirect someone's attention, just so that they miss what was right in front of them. I was taught to take advantage of how quick human beings are to make assumptions and jump to conclusions, and how placebos and things like the bandwagon effect works. I was taught how to use music and lighting and scripting to manipulate an audience's emotions. Then I started seeing the same things happening in TV commercials and on magazine covers and even in politics. I began to realize that many magicians just simply don't know what they know. So I set out on this mission to discover and decipher the language of deception that is being spoken around the world. I wanted to begin by talking to those working within the advertising industry, as well as those who spent time counseling the victims of that industry. But I wanted to begin with other fellow Americans walking the streets to discover just how aware we already are of the fact that we are being deceived. I assumed that everyone was oblivious. I was wrong. You believe that human beings are being deceived by anything?
Yeah.
What do you feel like they're being deceived by?
But I feel like a lot of people take less time trying to find out
if what you're saying is true. I don't know who said that. I think a president once said that, how easy is it for leaders to lead because a lot of men don't think. So it's like, you know, you as a man, a lot of people just follow the trend.
I think deception has a lot to do with trying to get what you want. So it doesn't always have to be an insecurity. It's you have to make yourself be a little bit more than you are in order to attract certain things.
I think a pressure to be like better. I think pressure, like you don't want to be average.
What about things like, I mean, we're surrounded by lots of marketing and advertising messages. Do you feel like that's changing the way that Americans think?
They might not even directly sell you what they're marketing, but it'll make you feel like you're nothing without their product. So now you feel like you're missing out, like, oh, I have to get that.
You're constantly inundated with messages, be it something you read, something you see, something you hear, something someone talks to you about.
So everything is giving you a different message in terms of like, oh, if you rock that clothes or if you rock that blouse, then, you know what I'm saying, you might be deceived or you might be into thinking that you'd be more attractive. You know what I'm saying? When in actuality, you know what I'm saying, those folks are attractive without those brands on them. You know what I mean? So I feel like, yeah, it's deception.
But does that mean that all advertising is deceptive?
Not all. But basically, a lot of advertisements they have around here, you know, they're showing people and, you know, they're advertising their goods and stuff like that. But stuff like that right there, that makes a guy walk down the street and get slapped by his lady. You might smack him. That's where the deception comes from.
So the question is whose fault is that? Is it the person that created the advertisement or the guy looking at it?
The guy created it to sell, to make money.
Uh-huh.
By all means necessary. So it's both of their faults.
So if everybody already knows they're being deceived, why is it still working?
Because it's convenient. You know what I'm saying? It's convenient to like not have to work to look a certain way. I can brand you or word. You look like the type that rocks the jean joint with the boots. Okay, cool. We just sell that too. You know what I'm saying? It's all manufacturing. And it's like I feel like it once served a purpose, and then it got a little bit out of control. Like the deception monster, the entity behind that or whatever, took control.
It's estimated that a person sees somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 different ads a day. So this could come from the logo on your toothpaste tube all the way to a television commercial. That's obviously a lot of advertisements. And then on top of that, it's somewhere between a $30 and $40 billion a year industry. So there's a lot of money involved in serving up those ads as well. The thing to remember about advertising is that it works best when it's part true and part false. So what happens is the truth makes it credible and reliable, and then the falsehood makes it somewhat seductive. So it's what draws me in and makes me want to believe all the parts that aren't true. So if that's happening 4,000 to 5,000 times a day, and it's a $40 billion a year industry, I would say there's something pretty big that we have to think about and consider as we're navigating it. Marketing works best when you can get everyone thinking the same way. It's way easier to message something to the masses than to a singular person. As you start to unpack sort of the idea of advertising, you eventually get to consumption. And you eventually get to this narrative that says, there's an American dream that gives me a house, 2 cars, not any house, by the way. It's got to have a couple bedrooms and a yard and, you know, a fence. And it says that I can go out on Friday night and eat at TGI Fridays or whatever and get unlimited apps. And, you know, it presents a very particular way of living. And so I have to wrestle with, like, is that the way I should be living? Was I called to live a comfortable existence and buy these things?
Are advertisers and marketers deceiving us? Are they responsible for the lies that have kind of spread throughout American culture? Or are we deceiving ourselves?
Yeah, it's both, right? So you can't be blameless in a situation if you're part of it. So the advertiser sitting on Madison Avenue who is creating an ad that taps into the insecurities of a young woman and her self-image problems in order to sell more bikinis or whatever it is, like they're culpable in that. I'm not sure how blatant it is though. I mean, these are men and women with families just like you and I, and they go home at night and they turn on television and they go to the park over the weekend. It's not some consortium of evil people trying
With a grand conspiracy.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't think so. But they are individuals and they are responsible for their own actions and they're responsible to be thoughtful about what they're producing and putting out into the world. Sure, absolutely. The flip though is that I, as a consumer, I also have a responsibility to be thoughtful about the things that I'm consuming and the ads that I'm taking in and the way that I'm purchasing and what I'm thinking about and why I'm doing certain things. The way I look at it is, it's not that one party is more or less responsible, it's that they're both equally responsible, but at the end of the day, the person receiving the message, I think, is ultimately responsible for deciphering it, checking their motives, figuring out what it's actually saying, and then acting on it in a way that is appropriate to their worldview. So yeah, I think the consumer is the one that's ultimately responsible for whatever deception is or isn't happening.
So when I started to figure all this out, I wanted to blame the world. I was like, hey, they deceived me, and American consumerism is totally out of control. We're being lied to every single day. But the hardest discovery was that my problems were not just the result of someone trying to deceive me, but how I was actually deceiving myself.
I'm a therapist. I work at a residential treatment facility for girls who have eating disorders. So they live there and we have staff there 24 hours a day.
What's driving so many of the problems to making girls feel this way?
Control, perfectionism, wanting to fit in, wanting to have it all. This idea of like having the perfect body and the perfect job and like your life just together. And I think it's getting harder and harder, especially for women. Not that men don't develop eating disorders, but for women, like to want to have everything that they can in their life. And that feeling, like for some people, like when you have control over your food makes you feel like you have control over other areas of your life.
Like, do you feel like them being surrounded by what is essentially a photoshopped culture, is it making them go, I don't look like that girl on the cover of the magazine, I don't look like that actress in the movie, but I need to, otherwise I'm not gonna be good enough?
I don't think it helps. I mean, I don't think it helps, but I think that one of the things that really is common with eating disorders is this comparison thing, and I see it a lot where, you know, girls that I work with will compare themselves to one another, they'll compare themselves to me, they'll compare themselves to famous people. I mean, the initial way that those neural pathways get started could be fed from somebody else, could be just an experience you have and it forms a belief. But a lot of those things, it's a belief system. And we all, every single person has our own belief systems that we form. Usually when you're pretty small, you form belief systems. And that's just not to say that like most people with eating disorders like form from childhood, but you're influenced. When they get to our facility, we lock their phones up and their computer as well. Before they leave, we will, you know, slowly integrate them back in with their phone or their computer if they want to, but the therapist, with their permission, will go through their phone and check for calorie counters mostly, like many food apps on the phone. And I have checked social media because it is a part that interests me.
I'm now realizing that throughout my teenage years and early 20s, my vocation as an illusionist became my lifestyle. I would walk on stage, perform a show, and then I would walk off stage, but the show never ended. I was doing everything in my power to control and maintain the perceptions of other people so that they could see me the way that I wanted them to see me. I thought I was just being materialistic by wanting nice things like a nice house and nice cars and expensive clothes, but I'm beginning to realize that wasn't it at all. I was addicted to the approval of other people and was living in fear of not being enough. And like all Americans, I was being told thousands of times a day by a $40 billion advertising industry that I would never be enough without those things. But I was desperate to be loved and accepted, and somehow believed the lie that I could trick other people into liking me. And I don't think I'm alone. I mean, aren't we all doing this every day online? I mean, the majority of the people in the world may never step foot on a physical stage. We are putting on one heck of a show. And most of us think we have everyone fooled.
Well, I grew up in Orange County, California. My family is incredible people. My dad was in the music industry. My mom was a full-time model who turned into a real estate agent. And my mom, she pushed modeling on me. Like, she introduced me to it, but I didn't really want anything to do with it. Like, I wanted to go to culinary school and open up a restaurant because she's also a really good cook. And I wanted to do pageants because of my mom, because she competed in Miss USA. So they had a really big impact on me. And then my senior year of high school, I was scouted. I was at the beach with my friends, and a modeling agent came up to me. They signed me on the spot that day, and that was when my career in the modeling industry started. I was like, I'm gonna take a year. If it doesn't work out, if I'm not doing well, I'm gonna go back to my original dream of culinary school. But I really wanna try this because this is something new and exciting, and it makes me feel pretty and worth something. When I first started with them, they made me feel so special. These people were like, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that. And I was like, okay, yay, so exciting. I had my first photo shoots and they were so happy. And at that time, my parents had just moved to Kentucky. So I stayed back at 17 years old. They did not want me to. And I lived with 6 other girls.
All models?
All models. It was just a really, really cool environment until it got a little dark. And along the lines, it was just like, okay, Nadia, your hips are this size. We want to take them down just an inch. And I was like, okay. My eyes were open to things I'd never seen before. Girls living off of hard-boiled eggs. Girls who didn't eat anything. Girls who ate so much and then would go purge immediately after. And for me, that was just not something I ever considered. I have a fast metabolism. I would tell, my boyfriend at the time, I would be like, I see all of this happening and I don't want this to happen, so I'm leaving. It's making me uncomfortable. And I was like, I promise that'll never happen to me. 2 months later, I realized that I was obsessively counting calories. I went from, in the matter of 3 months, 135 pounds, healthy for a 5'11" girl, to 104. I was filled with anger. I was just always unhappy. And I wish someone would have just been like, hello, what are you doing? But my parents weren't there, and it took me down a terrible path. And for about 6 months, I was just destroying my body. I lost my menstrual cycle. I became jittery where I'd have to have a tablespoon of honey at night because I felt like I was gonna pass out. And I just would freak out about the tablespoon of honey because I didn't want to put sugar in my body. And it didn't help that every time I'd go into my agency and they'd see me lose more, they'd be like, you look amazing, you look so high fashion, you look wonderful. It was such a dark time. And at this time, I'm so skinny, but I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I hate the way I look. I see rolls, I see no waist, I see not a big enough thigh gap. And it was like, I was so sick. You could see every bone in my body. I don't know what it was at the time that was destroying me, that was eating me alive, because I didn't see what other people saw. I saw a girl who needed to lose more. Because I didn't see what other people saw. Because I didn't see what other people saw.
So if a company who sells sexy lingerie is using a young music artist to connect with preteen girls that aren't quite mature enough to be wearing that style of lingerie, who should be held responsible?
Yeah, it's all of them. The parents should be doing their best to present a view of sexuality and a narrative of sexuality to their young daughter or their young son that that is counter to whatever that narrative is. Victoria's Secret, like, that's just not okay. And they know that. There's dads in that meeting. Advertising is just the easy thing to attack. It has the pretty pictures. We kind of all see it. We can kind of all get our head around it. But when you start branching out from it, you see that there's all sorts of characters in this web of deception.
How did we, as a society, get to this position? We're so desperate to feel accepted that scientists have now done studies that reveal the hits of dopamine that our brains receive when our phones light up with a message or a retweet or like or snap or friend request. A hit that some studies show is as addicting as some illegal drugs like cocaine. We are addicted, but we're not addicted to tiny computers. We're addicted to approval. Like Jason said in New York, 4,000 to 5,000 messages a day. 5,000 messages a day telling us that we aren't enough, that we don't measure up, which creates these mountains of insecurities. We aren't thin enough, we're not perfect enough, strong enough, cool enough, wealthy enough, smart enough, just never enough. And what do we do about it? We feed our insecurities with more lies. We lie to ourselves, and then we start lying to everyone else. It's not like we make this conscious decision to become these sort of liars. It's just that we all end up putting on a magic show, and social media networks become the platforms for those performances. We do our best tricks, we view the likes as applause, and then we walk off stage or put down our phones and subconsciously hope that we fooled as many people as possible. We have to perform and we have to put on a good show because heaven forbid if other people see us the way that we actually see ourselves in the mirror. For me, I think a lot of my self-deception goes back to being bullied in school. Kids would make fun of me, and then I would come home from school and look for approval at home, but my relationship with my dad wasn't perfect. I had a great dad. It's just that his dad was an alcoholic who abused he and his brother and my grandmother all the time. My dad loves me deeply. I just think he maybe didn't always know the best way to show it. I remember some of my first magic shows. I can picture exactly what the stages and venues looked like this home video sort of playing back in my mind. I remember walking off stage at the end of the show to applause, to my dad standing backstage in the wings of the theater and hearing, "That wasn't good enough," or, "If you're gonna take this magic thing seriously, you're gonna have to work a lot harder next time." I believed the lie that my performance, both on stage and off, would somehow lead to acceptance and approval. And so I set off on a mission to show the world that I had what it takes. I know by how much my dad loves me that it wasn't the story that he was trying to tell me. He wanted to push me to work hard and be excellent so that I could somehow live a different life than the one that he had found himself living. But the story I told myself was different. And when your narrative is that you don't measure up, you take all of your deepest, darkest secrets and you lock them away. Instead of getting help, you hide. I had so many secrets. And magicians were really good at keeping secrets. Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. I don't know if she meant those words for storytellers who write and tell fictional stories, or for those who have a story that unwillingly happened to them. But either way, I know it's true. I think I'm ready to tell the truth. I think that maybe some secrets aren't meant to be kept.
You ready?
I'm getting there.
Gosh, I was going.
Me too. Might make the trip a little easier.
Yeah, I'm feeling mentally prepared. No? Yes?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Hello. Just hold out. Maybe take this, take off the top and pour. Yeah. No? Yeah. Okay. Hey, candy. Candy. This is difficult. Ready? Watch. Water. Magic. Magic. All right, thank you.
My name is Annie Dieselberg, and I'm the founding CEO of Nightlight International. And we are a faith-based organization that addresses the complex issues of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation. The majority of women in prostitution, high majority, have been sexually abused, neglected, abandoned, beaten down, devalued. Deception is a huge part of it. You know, there's something happened there that distorted, that destroyed the image of who they are. So at some point early on in life, to no fault of their own, they believe the lie, that they're worthless.
I mean, what happens in the beginning? How does someone even fall for the deception of even getting involved in something like this in the first place?
The deception begins from a heartfelt need, because these people are looking for a means to provide for their families. And so out of that desperation, they're always going to have their ears open. And many times it starts right in their own hometown or their backyard. And so that's where it begins, with a simple conversation and swapping of phone numbers. And then the person who's trying to recruit follows up.
Traffickers, pimps, they know how to prey on them, and they know how to spot women and girls who have been sexually abused. And there have been quotes from pimps who have said, "We look for the girls who have been abused by their fathers, their brothers, their uncles. And then we are nicer to them than they ever were, and crueler to them than they ever were." And so they manipulate that vulnerability. But then what drives a pimp to take advantage of that vulnerability? Well, go back to the pimp's background. What lies did he believe? He also was probably mistreated. He was probably abused. And so he believes a lie about who he is and what it means to be powerful or what will make him happy in life. So then he devalues the woman because he's driving to get something to fulfill his need.
ก็ชื่อมิ้นค่ะมาจากอีสานตอนนี้อายุ24แล้วก็ท้องก็ตอนนั้นก็เป็นวัยรุ่นก็ได้พบกับผู้ชายแล้วก็ท้องก็เป็นวัยรุ่นก็แล้วแฟนที่เป็นคนไทยเขาก็เล่นยาติดยาก็เล่นยาด้วยกันแล้วก็ผู้ชายคนนั้นก็ซ้อมบ่อยๆด้วยในตอนท้อง ค่ะเขาทำร้ายตอนที่หนูยังท้องแล้วก็ช่วงนั้นก็เลยเขาก็โดนจับเพราะว่าเขาขายยาเขาแบบยุ่งเกี่ยวกับยาเสพติดอะไรเงี้ยญาติที่เขาแนะนำว่าจะพามาทำงานที่กรุงเทพที่ร้านอาหารก็เลยกลับไปเอาลูกไปไว้ที่บ้านกับยายที่อีสานแล้วก็เลยมาที่กรุงเทพมาทำงานแต่ว่าเขาก็พาไปสมัครที่อาบอบนวดอะไรเงี้ยเป็นงานที่ได้เงินดีนะอะไรเงี้ยเราก็ต้องทำ
They're obviously sold some sort of false story of this is how great it's going to be. And then there's that moment that happens where they arrive on the scene and it's, oh no, this is not what it was told to me.
I would say that the majority of the women who are trafficked know that they're going into the sex industry. A small portion are told we could get you a job as a maid at a hotel or a waitress or something like that. But I would say the majority, the ones that I've helped, they all knew what they were going to do. But the cost of not doing something was greater because they had children literally that they couldn't feed.
It's survival. It's if I don't sell my body tonight, I can't get the drug fix that I need. I won't have shelter. I won't have food to eat. Or worse yet, my children, my parents. I mean, that's the driving force. Most women in prostitution are self-sacrificing.
The real aha moment where the lights come on is when they get to the destination of where they're to be employed. They came of their own free will. That's not slavery. But the minute their passport is taken away, they are confined, they're stripped, searched, they're told these are your hours, these are your clients. And that is the moment at which the slavery begins.
แล้วก็เวลาที่ทำงานก็เพราะตอนนั้นเรายังไม่รู้จักว่าพระเจ้าเป็นใครใช่ไหมเราก็พยายามที่จะพึ่งพาในสิ่งเหล่านั้นอะที่เราคิดว่าโอเคเขาสามารถช่วยเราได้อะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะก็ตอนนั้นก็ทำทุกวิถีทางเพื่อที่จะให้ได้ลูกค้าทำไปทุกที่ที่แบบที่ไหนว่าดีเกี่ยวกับไสยศาสตร์ที่ว่าจะให้มีลูกค้าเยอะๆไปทุกที่ทุกวัดทุกที่เลยที่ไปทำทุกวิถีทางที่จะให้แบบโอเคให้ลูกค้าหลงให้ลูกค้ารักเราอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะแล้วคิดว่าไม่ใช่เฉพาะมิ้นที่คิดแบบนั้นเพราะว่าผู้หญิงที่มาทำงานขายบริการทุกคนจุดมุ่งเน้นเลยคือต้องการเงินที่จะทำให้ครอบครัวดีขึ้นฐานะดีขึ้นค่ะ
So the customers come to buy a fantasy. Many of the men are older men who are lonely, whose marriages are either broken, unhappy, or they're divorced, or they never married, and they find themselves at a stage in life where they're having a crisis, an identity crisis. They don't know who they are, they don't know why they're living, they don't know what life is about, and they're seeking something that will make them feel alive again. And so they come to Thailand, they throw down their money so that a woman will make them feel like they're important, they're desirable, they're a knight in shining armor, they're powerful, they're somebody. And so they pay their money for that fantasy. So the whole thing is it's just a lie. And yet you have a lot of people who are believing their own lies and so desperate that they just end up in this pot of people just taking advantage of each other.
You know, my job as a father and as a husband is to protect my family. In fact, it is human instinct to help those in need. And I just cannot understand how anyone can be so cruel. Where did the deception come in the lives of those mama-sans that this was acceptable and okay? How are they justifying in their heart and conscience that this is okay to do to somebody else? I want to know where that began, because that's where the full deception begins. Because without that deception, they would not be preying on these other people for their own personal gain.
I'm not really sure how or where to begin. It's hard to find the words to really describe what happened or how it felt, or the hell that it unleashed in my head for 2 decades. But I can't go on living with this secret. I'm ready to tell others what my wife and a few closest friends have been told. I think it started in a hotel room in Indianapolis. I'd finished my performance at a conference for other magicians. I was like this sort of golden child in this certain circle of magicians. I'd won all these awards and accolades, and the president of the magic organization that produced the conference had taken me under his wing and become a new mentor to me and a close friend, really close friend to my family. Everyone loved this guy. Rumor was that, and I later actually discovered this to be true, was that he had been one of David Copperfield's first magic teachers and mentors up in New Jersey when he was a kid. And now this guy, he was pouring his attention into me. And at night we would work on new magic in the hotel room. In this particular night we were working on dove magic. I'd won a national magic competition the year prior, and he was helping me with a new act that involved making doves, repeatedly appear out of nowhere. Obviously, stage magic isn't real. I mean, the doves have to come from somewhere. Take off your pants. We'll never forget those words. He was sitting on the bed, and he just looked at me and he said, "Take off your pants." I remember asking why, and then he proceeded to explain how, depending on my body shape, that there might be a way to hide some body loads, not just in my, inside my suit coat, but along the legs of my pants. Honestly, I was more confused than anything. I was too young and naive to realize what was actually being attempted. And I felt ashamed for letting it happen, and I was just confused about what to do about it. It wasn't just confusing, it was isolating. And I wondered, even if I did tell someone, would they believe me? And even if they did believe me, I was afraid of what they would say. The whole thing just seemed weird and crazy at first. But that's how being molested first began. Somewhere along the way, young and confused and feeling somewhat indebted to my mentor, it just sort of happened. I was molested. It happened repeatedly in hotel rooms at these different conferences that he would get our acts booked at around the country. They were conferences for other magicians, and he was their faithful leader, the president of the magic organization. Everyone looked up to him, including me at first. Other magicians, they would come up and say things to me like, "Wow, Harris, you should feel blessed to have a mentor like Bill." They would remind me that he was one of David Copperfield's first teachers. They would say things like, you know, Harris, Bill has forgotten more magic than most magicians will ever know. That's how much experience he has. It's like he was their idol, like some sort of god of the magic world. And often found myself thinking like, I mean, who am I to try to make their god look bad by talking about what was actually happening behind closed doors? Night after night on the road, I would get touched inappropriately, and I'd be asked to sleep in his bed next to him. He would insist that I leave the door open while showering and insisted on helping me dry off my back when I got out because it's just, it was too hard to reach. He just made it seem like he was really lonely. And I was this young, naive, impressionable kid. And I'd always get the, like, don't tell anybody about this or they'll totally misunderstand kind of talk. It happened for about 3 years, dozens of times. Times that my parents sent me to his house in Florida to train with him. Those were always the worst. I don't blame my mom and dad. They had no idea. The guy was a pastor. He was respected in the community. And he was extending his platform as a magician to me, and it was helping me. It was furthering my career at the time, even at such a young age. He was the president of a Christian organization, one of the largest magic organizations in the world. It just so happened that he was also a Boy Scout troop leader and a teacher at a magic camp for boys earlier in his life. Positions that you would never give to someone if you knew that they were a child predator. It later came to light that this had gone on for decades. I was far, far from being the only kid that was abused and molested.
Look at the Holocaust. At what point is it okay to say these people don't deserve to live? What depth of darkness? What depth of depravity? What is the human character capable of?
What I'm discovering is that every form of deception that I've come in contact with on this journey seems to fall into some categories that have been around since seemingly the beginning of time: the pursuit of money, sex, and power. I now look back and realize that so many stories of abuse are really about someone's pursuit of power. I didn't realize the power of my past and how much power it had over me until the phone call that I got to tell me that Bill had died 5 years ago. I was standing backstage at a conference, and the voice on the phone said, "Is this Mr. Harris?" He began to explain to me that he had died and that I had been named the executor of his will. I had no idea why. I had completely cut him out of my life a long time ago, before that phone call. As a teenager, the moment that I matured enough to realize what he had done to me, I'd moved on with my life. I thought I'd gotten over it, and then all of a sudden this flood of emotion starts pouring back in. It was at that moment that I began to realize the truth about all the lies. the lies that permeated my past and shaped my identity. It was the first step to getting help and finding freedom. Lies are powerful. They can destroy you if you let them. You end up feeling trapped and powerless. You become a slave to the portion of your story that was written for you, and you fear that you won't have the power to change the way that your story ends. That's because fear is a liar. It gives birth to deception, and deception leads to death. That might sound like an exaggeration, but it's true. Lies have killed millions of people. Kids like me who grew up abused often end up fighting depression, sometimes committing suicide. Girls like Nadia who develop eating disorders end up cutting themselves and starving themselves to death, literally. And there are tens of millions of people, just like Mint, trapped in human trafficking who are still breathing, but I think you could argue that they don't feel very alive. Money, sex, and power. They so easily deceive if we let them. I can't stop thinking about what my friend said about the Holocaust. It has to be one of the greatest examples of deception of all time. What I'm interested in is what illusions, what form of deception was used for that entire part of history to unfold. Did deception play a major role in the Holocaust?
Yes, it did. A lot of what you see when you talk about deception, there were certain images created by Goebbels, Hitler, all the rest of the leaders that were allowable. So you could hold on to those images, you could hold on to those stories, you could promote those ideas. And then there was a huge array of things that was slowly but surely becoming less acceptable. As the Nazis gained more and more power, they created a totalitarian state in which they dictated that which is truth and that which is not. It was a world in which everybody was now coming together. And they were coming together around this short little dude. He sold the movement as something that had never been seen in Germany before.
And they were thirsty for it,
Absolutely.
Right? So
they had lost the war. The Versailles Treaty was horrible. They had no national pride. And the people were angry, the people were hurt, but the people did not have a target for this anger. And Hitler's brilliance was he gave him one. He gave him the Jew.
So you were born in 1926?
In 1926, a long time ago. I was born in Romania, in the city of Cluj. Our Jewish persecution really started in the middle and late 30s. Was in high school, high school age. Well, on the first day of my high school, I went home crying all the way. And I asked my father, tell me, Dad, what did we do? Did we commit some kind of, we didn't commit any sin. Why are we treated like that? Where are we treated like that? My father said, well, I have difficulty in telling you why, because I'm thinking myself, I have the question why they will not do that. So you see, we trusted them. And they wanted to trust them, so they gradually was been springing upon us more and more and more until they trapped us. When the Germans came in, everything went fast. On our identity card, it was stamped Jew, and if you didn't have your card or your star, then you could put in jail. I was so shocked because I never experienced violence and real evil. We were taken to the railway, and here comes the big lie. We are going to be taken within the country, and that we are going to be families together, and we are not going to be outside, and we are going to have much living quarters, better food. We believed it. They fooled us with that, you see, so that we go willingly. I said goodbye to my childhood and to my teenage years. And I knew I will never see our home again. And I have seen the sign Auschwitz. I didn't know what Auschwitz was, you know, where we were. One thing that will never leave me, it was in the second day in Auschwitz. See, I could see a truck going on this Lagerstrasse, loaded with corpses. And I remember there were so many corpses, some of those that were on the top. Their hands were hanging down. I never forget anything. And I was wondering, my God, so many corpses, from where? You see, I experienced such horrors. Then people ask me, Magda, you have such a good memory. How can you remember all that? And my answer to that is, how can I ever forget it?
What are the first examples of deception that come to mind during your times in the camps?
A deception that they created to the outside world with that. They gave us cards, postcards, to write to our relatives how well we are treated, and we are at the resort, we have good food, and you know, and try not to write. They would beat you up because they came and collected the cards, and it translated for me, this is a deception, because they want me to write so that they can arrest them too. What they did to the invalids and to the old people, you know, they said that they're going to help, and we believed it. We believed at that time that they indeed are going to be taken with a Red Cross car and get help. And do you know that they were accompanied, some of them, some of the transport, with classical music. Classical music to the gas chambers. Now, who would believe that it got to be the gas chambers accompanied by classical music? We were fooled all the time. As you're long enough, I can see the deception when, you know, the totalitarian states, they say everything is going to be fine for the people. And then they take the power, you see, and then gradually infringe upon your freedom and everything. But at the beginning, they fool you. Everything is going to be for your own good, how great they are, you see? And this is the fooling. Maybe it's deceit is part of humanity. Maybe it's also related to greed, to power, having the power.
I've heard stories of, you know, churches next to train tracks, and they're in church singing hymns, and when the rail cars would come down the train tracks filled with Jews on their way to a concentration camp, you know, there's personal accounts of Germans going, we would just sing louder because it was almost easier just to pretend and imagine like nothing was happening than it was to embrace the truth and accept it.
A lot of the resistance people, and the sister of one of the major leaders said, you know, it's not that I didn't know what was going on. It's not that I wasn't aware of all that. But you know, I could hardly live if I spent all of my days thinking about that which I was aware. So I didn't think about it. We went to the point at which we no longer wanted to know anything else, and at that point we stopped knowing. Now, is that deception? Yeah, of course it is. You stop asking certain questions, certain answers go away. You are aware that the more pieces you bring into the deception, the more powerful it is.
Yeah, layers. The more layers, the better.
That's what you had in Nazi Germany. Layer after layer after layer, and slowly but surely, the perception and the deception became the norm. Goebbels had his whole philosophy of propaganda. You tell a lie, you tell a big lie, You tell it often, you repeat it. Redundancy is the power of propaganda. And propaganda is to produce a particular outcome. And you know what the result is, and then you figure out how to get there. And if you tell that result over and over and over, eventually it kind of sneaks its way into your mindset. It's like you create language that you begin to use, and it's the language of the propaganda. And the more you use it, the more it seems right, the more it seems to convey what you think it should be. It's hard. It's hard. You live in deception long enough, and it's hard to find what is truth.
I think what I'm beginning to understand is that deception can't be fully pinned on advertising or prostitution or pornography or even Hitler. Deception is a human problem. Whether you're a pimp, a stockbroker, a model, a marketing guru, a Nazi leader, a child molester, or even a victim of one, whether you're poor or wealthy, whether you grow up in an American city inundated with advertisements or a rural village in Africa without internet access or a billboard for miles, it happens to us all. And what if the reason we're all walking around without a full awareness that we're being deceived is because we're walking around settling for counterfeit versions of the life that we were meant to live? What if there was a life that you were meant to live? A life filled with magical things and all the things that your soul was meant to have and is craving. But what if that life is being stolen from you? If you're convinced that the life that you have is rooted in truth, well, then no alarms would go off, because with a counterfeit in place, no one would be aware that anything had been stolen. We do the same kind of things in a magic show to deceive people all the time. That object that we borrow from you, that we put underneath a cloth or in a box for safekeeping, it might look or feel like it's still there, but trust me, it disappeared a long time ago. The only reason you missed the moment of deception is because with a counterfeit in place, you didn't know to look for it. A lot of us are walking around the streets thinking our pockets are full, but they aren't full of truth, just lies. Because while the world was picking our pockets, it was also packing them with counterfeit bills. The famous atheist turned Christian writer and philosopher C.S. Lewis once wrote, "It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak." He said that we are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum, because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at sea. We are too easily pleased. What if he's right? What if we're being robbed of true life, of real magic, simply because we settled, because we're far too easily pleased?
I was 7 weeks in Auschwitz. It was a miracle that every week I was pointed to the right, so I was left alive. And after that period of time, I was taken with 500 other strong women to my second camp, located in the city of Bremen. The Allies were close by. They did not want us to be liberated. They wanted to kill us more and more, because they were wanted to revenge of their loss, the war. And so we were taken from Bremen and to the extermination camp of Bergen-Belsen. We were forced to march 40 kilometers on foot, without food, without drinks. If we couldn't go on anymore, we were mercilessly shot by the SS guards. I tried to transport myself into another dimension. I was at home with my parents. I was eating stuffed cabbage, my favorite food. I was anywhere, but no, not in the place where I was, you know. It was the middle of the night when we arrived to the camps. The women's barracks there were filled. The women were yelling inside, "There's no more place." But I didn't listen to their cry. In the morning, we were horrified to see the campground of Bergen-Belsen where we were sleeping was littered with thousands of unburied corpses in all stages of decay. By the end of my 3rd week in Bergen-Belsen, I was dying. I looked like a skeleton. I was lying there. I couldn't talk anymore. I could not move anymore. My mind was still active. And I had to prepare for death. I was 19 and a half years old at that time. I saw the beauty of life, and it was so hard for me to prepare for death. But God had other plans for me. Because when I closed my eyes and I was ready to die, even in my mind I said, "Come, death, and take me. I am not afraid of you anymore." I heard a big commotion. I was afraid to open my eyes because I thought that I'm on the other side already, and what am I going to see? There was yelling and screaming. I opened my eyes and I thought that I could see the gates of Bergen-Belsen open and the British tanks rolling in, the liberators. Miraculously, I survived. But on that day, while that soldier was carrying me, I never found out his name. I never saw him again. I called him my guardian angel. He carried me and he was crying. And on that day, I prayed to God and I said, "Almighty God, if you would give me a second chance, I make a promise that I will keep alive the memory of all these victims left behind as long as I live." You make a promise to God. This is a secret war. You can never break it.
There's something that triggers when someone points out your weight or calls you out on that point in life where you're just like, instead of just letting it go in one ear and out the other, it resonates and it sits. And when you hear it several times over and over, you're like, I have to do something about this. It's like you develop this creepy little habit that turns into a ball of disaster. I even remember one morning, like, this is how bad you can get in it. I went to yoga and I had come back from yoga and my whole spine was bruised. I mean, I was covered in bruises because there's no meat to cover my bones, and I looked at it and I was so happy. I mean, how can you be happy when your body is bruised and you're hurt and because it just meant there was nothing there. And that reassured me that I was on the right path to being skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. And I didn't know what the truth was. If no one's helping you towards that, you're just gonna keep spiraling downward and downward. And I just wasn't around the right people in my life at the time. And my family finally came out to California. And the minute they saw me, my parents just broke down in tears. I picked them up from the airport and my mom just looked at me and said, "What happened to you?" My dad they didn't know. And finally it was people who cared about me seeing what destroyed me, what had happened. And I mean, it scared the living heck out of me.
I bet.
One day he walks out with a bowl of Cheerios. And I was like, you're insane if you think I'm putting that in my body. But I took my first bite. I sobbed the entire time. I took the bite and he was praying for me and it was so dramatic. But it was really my biggest fear. I look back and laugh, but at that time it was horrifying. And that was the moment I was like, okay, I'm gonna get better. 8 months later, I got better and I had gained all my weight back rapidly, which is scary because you have to understand with eating disorders, you completely rid your body of all nourishment I gained it so quickly and I was so scared, but at the same time that fear was blocked away. And if I just would have done that a little sooner, I wouldn't end up with the stuff that I deal with. I still have health problems to this day because of what I did to myself, and repercussions that I'll have to deal with in the future, because my ovaries shut down for such a long time, and I was told that there's a very slim chance that I could have children because of what I did to myself. I wouldn't change my story for anything in the world, because hitting rock bottom opened my eyes to a new passion in my life, and that is to instill confidence in young girls. Spread the message of loving the skin that you're in, loving the body that you're in, and that your self-worth, like I said, just does not come from any other person. It comes from your loved ones, from within, and from the big man upstairs.
What would you say to those girls that are listening right now who are looking at the mirror and they're going, I'm fat?
You're beautiful. You're so beautiful. And you need to tell yourself that every day. Write it on the mirror. This is what I did. This was my method. Every time I doubted the way that I looked, I'd write on the mirror. I wrote in lipstick, you're beautiful, you're skinny, you're loved.
Everyone I've talked to on this journey who found themselves entangled in deception, Magda, Nadia, Mint, when they discovered the truth, it set them free, and it's as if they discovered magic. And isn't that what we're all searching for? Magic? I'm not talking about the kind of magic that illusionists perform on stage, but something that breathes life and leaves us in more awe and wonder than anything that this current world and its clever counterfeits seem to offer us. I mean, Magda spent what she thought was her final hours imagining wonderful things that brought her peace, the magic of her childhood, the magic of what was and could be again. I've now come to realize that real magic isn't a card trick or a straitjacket escape. Again, those are just clever illusions, but true hope and freedom and forgiveness, joy, true connection, meaning, purpose, truth, and love, that is real magic. And it was right in front of me the entire time. As I've taken this journey, I've watched my kids begin to grow up, and they see magic everywhere. That magic of what is and could be again. The world has yet to rob them of that childlike awe and wonder. I'll never forget the first whimper of my newborn son, Jude. I held him in my arms, and I felt his tiny hand wrap around my finger. I watched the amazement in his baby eyes as he discovered light and color and all of creation for the first time, and I too began to see the wonder again. Eventually, I realized I'm witnessing the real thing. This is magic. It seems as though before my cynicism robbed my kids of the wonder that is all around them, my kids are reawakening wonder in me. Wonder does that. It keeps faith and hope alive. It guides you towards the truth in a world filled with deception. It keeps real magic alive. Seeing is believing. That's what a lot of folks think, but be careful, because illusionists prove that that isn't always true, because things aren't always as they seem. Our world is filled with counterfeits and fakes, and if we aren't careful, we become fakes ourselves. But I've now learned that while seeing isn't always believing, believing is seeing, because what we believe has the power to change what we see. I now believe in the possibility of a holiday at sea, because I want life, real life. And while living that awe-inspired life of wonder and possibility, I want to perform a different kind of magic from now on. Not just the kind of magic that shows others what is fake, but the kind that offers hope by pointing to what is real. I want a life filled with real magic. Don't you?